Ready for action, mate.
So I guess
Ready for action.
ready for action.
Get like half down if you need to first.
Big property, get out before branded big property finance.
Right.
Dan Kendrick, sales director, big property finance. Enough said. But how would you introduce yourself? What should people know about you?
Well, I like to think I introduced myself as someone who's near the top of the property game in terms of sales. You know, we well synonymous with the brand, I suppose. I've been that big for 4.5 years. Love property finance. We excel in bridging and dev. My side of things is the people person element that I bring to it. You know me well enough by now. It's kind of do what I say I'm going to do. Very sort of ad hoc at times, but get the job done. Work crazy hours, whichever way they come, but enjoy it. Spent a decade networking, so I think that's what people should. Well, a lot of people in our networks know us from the early mornings or lunchtime ones or the evenings, and having a bit of fun along the way. I suppose I like to kind of be seen as that sort of work hard, play hard, get the job done.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the important thing as well is like, how have you got to this point in your career? So you've told me a little bit about obviously what you did before this. Give me a little bit of just an insight, like early doors before you got into this. What was it that you were kind of known for?
Well, I suppose going all the way back to working life without boring you to death with school and college. We used to be in enforcement. So a very good friend of mine, our best pal in fact, ran a firm of bailiffs. I was young, living with my mum, was 21-ish. We went to work in London, doing a lot of enforcement stuff on behalf of the council, so business rates, council tax. It was not a job for everybody, but certainly one that sort of paid very well at the time. And we had a team of 10 of us at one point going to sort of Luton, Harrow, Barnet, various other boroughs in London. Yeah, sometimes letting myself into a property, sometimes jumping through a window, but all legal, of course. This, as long as it was peaceful entry was the phrase. Listen, and in terms of sales, and I say this quite a lot to people, sort of, I don't care about sales school, sales training, online classes. If you're convincing people to pay money they don't want to pay on their own doorstep or in their own business, the rest of it becomes easy. Me going out and convincing brokers or clients that we're a good fit, when I'm passionate about the business, that's easy. But sort of convincing an R8 customer that they're going to suddenly pay 25k in business rates that they don't want to pay, that's hard work. So it did me well. Kind of fast forward from there, the guy concerned went to set up a lender called Little Business Loans. Small cash flow lender based in Birmingham, doing really good things at the small end of the market. He then asked me to come across and do the BD there. So, our first sort of proper BD gig, no network, no real idea of how to get involved in it other than just use what I'm good at, which is my sort of conversation skills, my negotiation skills, being personable without networking. First ever networking do I can remember was at Be@One. It was a Future Faces networking do. Unfortunately, not a Future Face anymore, but certainly, it was a good open networking, wide range of people, and that just got me into the mix. I just went in there on my own with a lot of business cards and got cracking and started building a network. Was at Little Business Loans for 4 and a bit years, multi-award winning. Left them in a good place. We were good for each other, but then it was time to sort of move on and get into property finance, which is where I am now. 4.5 years later, big property finance came in. We've grown nicely along that time. Got a good social media presence now, but built an external team helping with that. Got a good presence across the Midlands and beyond. I've sort of got 670 brokers on my CRM that I've either done business with or have had good conversations with, and that's excluding all the accountants, IFAs, estate agents. So, best part of a decade networking in finance has taught me a lot of things, a lot of highs and lows, a lot of things to deal with. COVID, for example, maybe the odd interest rate increase and this trust and some other various bits and pieces. But listen, love it. Wouldn't change it for the world. Everybody who knows me knows that I kind of get stuck right in. Love doing deals. Love going out and presenting, showing what big are about. Love meeting new brokers. Love taking them golfing or going out on the beers. And the best is yet to come, really, as far as I see it. We're gonna make some moves. We're gonna grow again over these next 12 months, and the way we're going to do that is by to keep doing the things we're doing right, and add to that along the way.
Amazing. I obviously knew that you did a bit of the debt recovery back in your time, but I really like you'd never told me that spin on it. That was kind of your early doors to your sales experience. So 21 going into that, did you have? Was it completely like straight in at the deep end? Like, what was your tactic going in for that? Did you like learn the hard way as far as, because obviously with sales, correct me if you disagree here, but like with sales, it's conversational. You can't sell to anyone who isn't in the market to sell. When you went into that job initially, like what were you maybe told versus what you gained from that experience? And what I mean by that is like, did you go in and they were like, you've got to be a hard case. You've got to be somebody who's jumping through the window, completely legal, of course. Or did they go in and just be like, be a little bit more empathetical with this situation?
Well, so I sort of followed a friend of mine for sort of a week or two to see how he did it and get a hold of the paperwork and that side of things. But essentially, one of my mates who was doing it was 6'5", and your textbook bailiff, massive guy. You wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him. Whereas me is sort of a lot smaller in stature, but with quite a big mouth. You've got to be on the negotiation side of things. So there wasn't much briefing on that. Training is a different element now. When I was 21, there wasn't sort of depths of training in roles or compliance and things like there is now. It was very much of, this is your list of people, get around and see them. I was thrown in the deep end, as much as, it was very much of a case of, back then it wasn't even sat nav, so it was print your maps off. So we print off our maps and highlight the route we're going to go around. Yeah, proper old school, showing my age now, unfortunately. And yeah, we go and see them, but each one's different. So you're going to open the door and you're going to tell me to, F off, or you're going to start crying, or, you're going to enter into negotiation, whatever it is. So my main skill set is instantly analyzing. I can analyze a situation in 10 seconds better than most. That's just the way it is, based on years of doing that. So that's what you have to be. You have to be react. Someone's going to come out the trucks arguing with you. You don't argue back. You take a step back. You kind of let them get it off their chest, and then you go into it. If someone's obviously got a reason to be upset, you've got to be empathetic, but equally you're there to do a job. So it's balancing that, and it is all sales without knowing it. Essentially, it's not. We're going there to get it paid. If they're not, there is obviously a threat looming for them. If they don't, they could lose their goods or their business or whatever it is. But the skill set is to get them to pay, not to get to the point of removing goods. And in 10 years or so of doing it, we only ever organised removal of goods on a handful of times, which is probably testament to the way me and the guys operated. We would give them every chance to pay. We would show them that was the best thing that they could do, or at least set up an arrangement to pay.
Would you say you were more unique in that way of doing it, or like?
I think in that period of time, my style was more unique because there was a lot of big bruisers doing it. It was very much the stereotypical thing back then. Like everything's evolved. The debt collection world's evolved. The guys I know that still do it now are top of their game. They're going out with cameras on, which again we didn't have. So it's a safer environment now, I would suggest. But equally, there's more desperation out there in the current stage. People suffering harder times. So probably there wasn't many people my size doing what I did at that point, is what I would say. So yeah, I had to approach it from a conversation side of things, a negotiation side of things. But again, it's all. I was also more of a jack the lad than I am now, so I wasn't adverse to, if there was an altercation, it wouldn't scare me. Whereas now you just think, I've got a wife and kids. I'm not interested in that at all. But single guy working away with his single mates, doing the job, we were kind of, I suppose there was safety in numbers if needed, because there wasn't, all of us were in the same postcode, albeit on different doors, so you could make a call and then get the backup if you needed it. But listen, it was a part of my life. I look back at, it was a tough job, but working with people you like made it easier, because if in those situations, if you don't laugh, you'll cry, and you kind of got to sort of at the end of the day stop a few stories, have a bit of a laugh when you're back in the hotel, because it's been a tough day. But as I say, we got paid relatively well, and it was a point in my life where, it was sort of holding skills for where I am now. So yeah, we wouldn't change it, to be honest.
So you said it's a hard job, and I'm just curious because like one of the things I've learned from people, like from a sales perspective especially, is that like some of the top people I've met, their early experience was something like a call center where like you've really got to grind it. No one really enjoys doing it, but they come away from that experience like there's a benefit to doing it the hard way, coming out of that having learned that. And you being a parent yourself, would you say that like it's a little bit early for it, but let's say you're pushing your kids into some sort of employment. If you had the choice for them, would you say it's better to find something that's really going to challenge you when you're young, or would you maybe advise a different route?
I think for me as a parent, I'll be challenging them anyway in the right ways. Yeah, challenging them to be the best they can be. But yeah, I don't think there's any harm getting out there as early as possible and doing some real life work experience, picking up the phone, making those hard calls. We at Big we take on 1 or 2 work experience guys a year. And listen, sitting next to me probably teaches you a few things you won't read in a manual, but it also teaches you the amount of time I'm on the phone, the way I approach these calls. And in fairness, the last guy we had in really got on board with that. I gave him a list of guys we hadn't spoke to that I wanted to speak to. I'm constantly speaking on to my own vast network of brokers, so it's hard to balance the new business with the existing. And in fairness, he got stuck right in. He was making calls. He was getting rejected. He was just getting straight back onto the next one. And that's what it's all about. It's all getting you a bit of a backbone for business, because no one who's made millions has made it easily. There's been a lot of setbacks. Even if you read books on these big entrepreneurs, will tell you they've had numerous bankruptcies or numerous failed businesses. So I think we need to not get lost in the world of everyone sees the internet and think you can make £1 billion selling makeup, and that's great if you can, but not many can. So yeah, I would always encourage my kids or anybody to get into work experience early, real office environment, get the buzz of it. Of course, working from home is a big thing now, but for me, I excel in the office. I'm not the best at home. I get distracted easily when I'm in the office, and everybody needs to see me on form because that's my job. I've got to be the sales guy bringing it in, then it adds that element to it. But yeah, anyone starting out, go and get yourself a job that challenges you, puts you a bit out of your comfort zone, whatever that may be. And it'll stand you in good stead in the future, I guess.
Definitely. There was a study that I heard, just like as a summary of it, what stood out as far as what set people apart from like the winners and the people who struggled a little bit more was grit, that determination to just stick it out. Because it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily again, from being a parent's perspective, you don't necessarily want to think of your kids going through challenging times, but the sad reality is that is what gives people that edge.
100%.
It's that grit to get people that gets them through it.
I think sharing those experiences with your kids as well, though. But I mean, in sort of the office environment, the amount of rejections I get on a weekly basis, whether that be a new broker I want to speak to who hasn't got the time, or has already got a lender he prefers, or I sent some terms out that I thought were good, but somebody else has bettered the terms. You bounce back and you get on with it. There's a little, these are, in the scheme of things, it's just work. Obviously I love the job and stuff, but it's not, the kids are okay, the wife's okay, the family's okay. You get on with it. But I think sort of the hardest thing for some people can be getting into it is picking up the phone. Oh no, what if they say, what if they tell me to get lost? What if they say they're not interested? But then, you get that one, you pick up the phone, you get that one rejection, you go, oh, well, it wasn't so bad. Just call the next guy. And all of a sudden, 10 calls later, you've got some interest and you've got a deal. So just telling people to stick with it. I mean, again, being rejected on the phone, for me, it's a bit of a different route into it. But, when I've got, so-and-so on his front doorstep telling me he's going to knock me out, compared to being rejected on my phone, I know which is more of a daunting prospect, so it's not, it's why the sales element was never going to be a problem for me sort of doing the BD, because I'll go and do a presentation in front of 60 people, 100 people, because, it's still, for me, that's almost enjoyable compared to what I could have been doing in the enforcement world. So yeah, it's balancing it, but I'm not suggesting everybody needs to take that view. But what I would say is, don't be scared. What's the worst that could happen?
For sure. Well, I guess that's it, isn't it? Like once you've gone through some of those challenges, you've got more perspective to be able to say, like, I've done the hard stuff, even though I don't want to do this. It's not knocking a door with the threat of a...
Yeah, exactly. I've got stories for days, probably some of which can't be on on camera, on audio. Some of the stuff I went through, but people watch these Beat the Bailiff programs, it all tends to end well, and it's not that much of a predicament. And me and my sort of very good friends, who I'm still best friends with to this day, went through some stuff that, you know, you wouldn't want to go through, but that was work then. So now for me, this to be work, having meetings with some of the best brokers in the country, presenting to some of the best platforms or you know, sort of networks in the country. It's enjoyable, you know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, I still want to close that business, but it doesn't feel like, as much as I work hard, it doesn't feel like hard work. You know what I mean? Like working, sitting, putting a clamp on someone's car at 6 a.m. in the freezing cold in winter. That's hard work. You know what I mean? And you know, so it's but then you've still got to have that work ethic to transmit through to what we do. So it's still long days in this role, but the whole sort of arena is better. You know, you're dealing with up to £5 million loans. You're dealing with top brokers. You're having good conversations about quality properties. You know, you're going to sites and looking at developments. You know, it's all where I see myself and where I want to be. And, you know, the property place is a good space for anyone looking to get into it. That's for sure.
Definitely. Well, as much as I'd love to hear some of those stories of
Wait, that's what I mean. You used to have a few pints off camera, mate. I'll happily tell you.
But yeah, skipping ahead a little bit then. So you said once you go into that first financial role with
Little business loans.
Little business loans, you stepped into that with like from scratch, if I'm right. Did you?
Well, in terms of traditional BD experience, yeah, no finance network. Got in there, set up my LinkedIn page. You know, zero connections. You know, fresh business cards in the box. You know, textbook sort of setup. And yeah, just got out there. Just had the faith of my good friends who believed I could do it. Again, based on what he'd seen on the enforcement side of things. I think that's key. It's getting a chance. Everyone's like, oh, finance, property. How do I get into it? A lot of the time, it takes someone you know to give you a go. Because, you know, you might not have had that background that looks traditional on a CV, but everyone knows you've got the skill set. I mean, I'm, you know, being the sales director role now, when I'm looking to take people on, what am I looking for? It's not the glowing, you know, CV. It's the credentials of the person, the characteristics of the person. Are they hardworking? Are they personable? You know, these things that you can't teach. I can teach anybody a product. You know, I could teach people why big property finance excel in bridging and debt. This is what we're good at. This is what we're not. This is how you position it. But if they're not willing to work hard, if they're not willing to sort of spend that time networking, if they're not willing to sort of go the extra mile, that sort of, you called it grit earlier, that mindset, I would say, from people, you can't teach. That's neither of them got it or they haven't. So, you know, that's probably the key thing, what I see moving forward. So, you know, yes, you know, looping back, I came into it fresh with no experience, but I always had the mindset that I was going to go out and make those contacts, get that business. And listen, it didn't start really well. It took me a while. I got into a big network and I went out to see half of their brokers in person. A lot of people might hid behind the phone. I had that call on the phone, but I then went the extra mile and said, well, let's really hammer this home in person, you know, the way I like to. And that then, you know, set the ball rolling and never looked back. We started doing lots of business with this network. And, you know, I continued to my networking outside of that. I then ran a networking event for 3 years whilst going to numerous others. So, you know, I put myself out there. You know, the wife wasn't happy about it at the time because it's late nights, early mornings. But, you know, it was what was necessary to sort of build a brand, build, you know, my name within the Midlands predominantly, but of course further afield across England and Wales. You know, from year one, you know, basically we're sort of approaching year 10 now. Some of these contacts I'm still doing business with. So it shows what can be done if you put the hard yards in early. And, you know, but of course I still continue to network to try and sort of, you know, enhance that proposition even more.
Yeah, definitely. I think I obviously met you through networking. I met you through, was that the one you were talking about, the one you managed?
Yeah.
So I met you through BNI, of course, where fantastic hosts, always kept the roof lively. It was always good fun, great presenter. You always push for the laughs, which kept the room engaged.
I think it's important, isn't it? You know, you have a laugh along the way. I mean, there was an agenda they wanted me to follow, which I didn't quite follow. But, you know, yeah, as you said, the feedback tends to be what you said. Buzzing room, good businesses in the room, importantly as well. But a room people want to come and join. You know, it's 6:30 in the morning on a Wednesday. You need to have that vibe where people want to come, not just, oh God, I've got this again on a Wednesday. So I think we created that, didn't we? We had a good time along the way.
Definitely. Like I don't want to say too much about BNI, but obviously I think with the structure that they follow, it can be a little bit too firm. And if you don't have a little bit of like personality and flavor, like you are going to get those drop offs, at least what I saw from it. But there's a saying that I'm sure you've heard: your network is your net worth. So what I just got from like you reflecting on your early days was networking, in person stuff. For anyone like, because obviously when you're getting into this, and this someone might listen to this and they might be like early in the game or considering just stepping into it, or maybe they're already there wondering like what's my next move. There's different things you can do. You can call, you can email, you can meet people in person. But as far as like where, if you were going to give any advice to someone as far as like how do you get started, because it's all relationship based, even in like a B2C market as well, there's some element of like relationship, whether that's with your suppliers or whatever else. How important would you say it is to like rank it of like number one activity someone should be doing, as far as like networking or other things they should be doing?
Well, I think it depends on your profession, is what I would say, because it depends, so if you're, I don't know, I guess if you're a plumber, you need to be on the tools a lot of the time as well, especially if it's your own business, so your networking might be limited, or to limited certain times. But for me, the approach to networking is what I would really push in terms of when I first went out there, when we alluded to that sort of Future Faces gig or anything, a fresh box of business cards. I must admit the mindset was very much right. I need to try and get some business. Let's try and get some business. I'm out networking now. Who can I speak to? Maybe I'll get some business. Which again, there's nothing wrong with that. But in a long-term approach to genuine relationships via networking, it's not the right angle. So of course, pretty quickly, I sort of gathered, well, hang on a minute, where can I add value? And it's it's kind of cliche, but it's just a reality. This is the guys that there's plenty of, I've got a good standing with in the local community networking wise, because of, I've introduced a lot of people, I've passed a lot of business, whether that's through the structured routes that we mentioned earlier, or just my email introductions or meetings that I've put in place for people. So I think it's very much you, and as much as you, I suppose in the new gig, you really want to impress and show your new boss that you're bringing in business. If you're in it for the long term, they'll trust you anyway. So just make those relationships, make those solid relationships. I spoke to a guy who we knew yesterday. We spoke to Carl. Me and him met through the same networking. We're meeting up next week. It's a genuine relationship. We don't pass loads of business, but we do introductions for one another. So I think to just be yourself. It always comes off. You put on this little facade in the short term that's going to come out in the long run. Be yourself, be genuine, be open to sort of, giving business before you get it. And eventually it comes around. There's so many ways I use my network now, to the point of, real live example, a pal of mine, well, my brother-in-law, in fact, called me earlier, wants 2 tickets for a football game this evening. Knows I know one of the directors, the non-execs at the club, has called me up, says, do you mind getting me 2 tickets? I've called him. I met this guy through networking. He's like, damn, Joe, you're paying the ass, but yeah, no problem. You know what I mean? So it's like, but then I've introduced loads of business to that guy, so he's got no problem doing me a favor, and it's that reciprocal, it's that long-term view. I suppose it's easy for me to say now, because me starting out was like, bloody hell, just get that business in. But it definitely is the way. Just be genuine, put yourself out there, go to plenty of events, add some value, take a speaking gig, take a presenting gig, and get your name out there, and the rest will come.
Absolutely. I think I don't know if it was the same for you, but when you sort of like viewing the industry, or like, let's say, business as a whole from the outside with ambitions to get into it, and you see there's stories and things of like, are you taking your clients out to dinner and stuff, you almost don't really, or I felt like I didn't really appreciate really what that was about. But as you obviously get into it, it's all about people knowing, liking, and trusting you, which is of course the classic thing that they say about networking. But that's something that I found I almost really underappreciated, didn't really recognize really what it was about, that it is, you are there to become professional friends with people, and then, go on to actually become genuine friends with people.
Well, that's it. That's the beauty of it. The genuine, actual, real friendships at the end of it are a bonus. But yeah, it's gaining that trust for them to trust you with business. And the amount of times I've heard, Dad, it looks like you're having a lovely time all the time. You're out at this restaurant, you're out at that lovely bar. You've gone to MIPIM, your networking event in Cannes. You know what I mean? You're getting safe for the France with work. It's incredible. And it is incredible. And I do have nice times of work. But there's always a reason for that. It was the first time I attended MIPIM this year. Guys in the industry have been on about it for years. Clashes with Cheltenham races, which me and my MD like, so we tend to go there instead. But I went, but it wasn't me just turning up in the south of France with a plane ticket and an Airbnb and just going to let my hair down for 4 days. Don't get me wrong, a couple of the evenings we went pretty tasty, but that's the game as well. But I had structured meetings in the morning. I've come back and done a £1 million bridging loan with a guy I met out there. So, and again, I suppose to flip it on its head, a mate of mine just got into BD, who'd always been in sales before, but not kind of been down the road doing BD. And he kind of came to me a few weeks back, and he wouldn't mind me saying, he said, "Dan, bloody hell, I got respect for what you do now, because this is hard work. I mean, you've got a young family. You're going to a networking event in the morning. You do meetings all day or on the phone. Then you go into a networking event in the evening. It looks like it's all glamorous, but the people who've been doing it for a long time will tell you it is hard work for various reasons. And as much as it's a lot of time spent, and then you've all got to catch up on your emails in the evening when you're back at home, and you're back out again the next day on the road because you go to Leicester to see 3 brokers, and when you got it, so it's, I wouldn't change it. And there's harder jobs in the world in terms of manual labor and various else. Don't get me wrong, but for my pal to come to me and say that, I really respect what you do now, because he's just getting into it and seeing how much it takes out of you.
That's nice to hear. I think that's definitely something that on the surface people would probably look at that and be like, oh bloody hell, he's going out for drinks, he's going out to nice restaurants.
Oh, he's got shades on again in the south of France. Yeah, it looks like that.
Working hard.
It does look like that. I can see the way the perception is, but I sort of challenge anyone who's been doing it a long time. I would say we would tell you that it definitely has its ups and downs as well, and can take its toll.
No, definitely. But there's certainly harder jobs out there, but you can't knock the work and the time that people obviously put into that to build those relationships, because it is a full-time thing.
And it's like, there's lots of other lenders as well. So I've always got to be on the top of my game. There's lots of lenders. There's good choice for brokers and borrowers to go to. So I've got to make sure I'm on point with keeping the levels of communication up. I've got to make sure I'm going to see these guys regularly. I've got to make sure I'm on the phone, keep them updated via email. Some of the stuff you help with, just because you can't make 650 calls a week. So, keeping regularly updated with product changes, information changes, and that's all part of the sales role, as well as getting that new business. So, you get striking the balance of, I've already done business with these guys, so first and foremost, I want to keep on top of those. I want to make sure they're happy, whilst bringing some new bits in as well. So, possibly 1 or 2, BDs coming to help me as we move on. But again, that's getting the right candidate in the right time. And, I think sort of for now, we're just assessing that market before we delve into it again.
So talk to me a little bit about your transition from that first finance role you had, moving into, how did big property finance come about for you?
Well, I mean, I spoke with the owner. He suggested he really wanted to grow the business, and he wanted me to come and spearhead that, which is good to hear. So we thrashed that out pretty quickly. I was ready for a new challenge. So I suppose with that, I came with an arsenal of brokers. Came with a lot of brokers I'd sort of made good connections with, formed friendships with in my previous role, but I'd never done a property deal in my life. I'd never considered a property deal. Never looked at any property deal criteria. So naturally, I kind of was back to basics on that. So I kind of had my little sheet of everything we're good at, loan to values, interest rates, areas that we cover, what we like, what we don't like, and just hit the phone. So I didn't really do too many in-person meetings at that point. It was more just covering all my existing guys. This is what I'm doing now. This is what we offer. Keeping an ear out, we appreciate any opportunity. So I didn't even, by the time you've done that call 60 times, you know the criteria, so you don't need the script anymore. And and eventually you add a bit of finesse to it and make it a bit more personable, which is how I feel like I am in business. But I guess starting from scratch, I needed the notes, and but then as it progressed, I was speaking to guys here and what problems they were having with bridging lenders and trying to solve the problem, rather than just going, this is what I do, this is what I do. But again, that came with confidence. I did a deal pretty early on through a long-standing broker of mine, great guy. Actually did a deal in my first month, which is kind of, it's unlikely in a new role such as that, because typically a bridging loan can take a month from start to finish anyway. But we did one early doors, probably got a bit excited and thought I'd cracked it, and probably went a bit too heavy on the meetings in the second month rather than just keeping doing the fundamentals. In our line of work, you've got to be personable, you've got to be in front of people, you've also got to do the basics on the phone as well, and it's balancing that. So I probably went too heavy in new biz meetings. To be honest, so it's kind of a bit of an eye-opener, and nothing really happened in the second month because I was getting around people trying to generate that new business and that new trust. But then the short win was always going to be from the guys I already knew because I'd already established that. So back to basics, months 3 and 4, and it's kind of got the business moving again. And month 6 onwards, that's 6 months to 12 months, it really took shape. Did a couple of decent deals. Did my first £1 million plus deal, and because bearing in mind I'd come from a place where we did 20k maximum, and now I was moving into 50k to 5 mil. My first deal was about 150k. And then we kind of progressed through that. But sunk a 1.2 million quid deal, and I've thankfully sunk quite a few in 1 million plus deals after that. So yeah, the transition was, I wouldn't say it was hard. It was just an eye opener, but it's a challenge. I had a good team around me. The MD is very experienced. Senior underwriter is very experienced. These guys are still there now. So we've grown together over the last 4.5 years. Obviously, I've kind of put my own spin on the way I operate, as I tend to. Criteria changes, various stuff we can't control have impacted us. We had an unbelievable year, 2023. With that came, some bad debts and defaults in 2024, which I hadn't really come across before because, most of our loans were paying out when they should do, repaying us when they should do. But, with the interest rate rises and buy-to-let lenders tightening their criteria, people were struggling to exit our loans. So that brought a new side to it that I hadn't really seen before. And because we were a personal firm, we were trying to get ahead of the game, reaching out to the borrowers. Are you going to be able to exit in time? If not, let's look at an extension now, rather than getting to the point of default and you haven't contacted us, and we're going to then charge you double interest as per the agreement. So yeah, that was a bit of a new take. I'm not because of my enforcement days, I'm not shy to get hands on as well. I don't want my sort of underwriters, my case managers taking the brunt of that. Some of these guys calling and getting a bit upset because it's got to that point. That's not our fault. Our terms haven't changed. They have managed to get the exit, but that falls on them. But we will still work with you to try and give you a bit more time to get that exit. No one wants to repossess properties. No one wants to increase rates. But equally, we have to look after our own sort of best interests as well. So it's a bit of a sort of, as I say, a sign of the business I hadn't really seen. Because everyone was paying back on time in my first year, a couple of years. But then, so 2025, and we're looking to really sort of push on now. Again, it was a bit of a slow start to the year. What I found is when I came into this, everyone would say, Dan, right, these are the trends. These are, you'll be busy until April. April will be quiet because of Easter. Then you'll be busy till August summer holidays. Then you'll be dead at Christmas. I think these sort of trends, business comes and goes now. And what we need to do is win it when we can, do the deals we like. For example, I was absolutely chocker August last year. Did a massive deal. Not that came around in August, because that's the result of July's work coming into August. But we did also do some deals, urgent deals in August. So I think the market's changing, and the skill set from bridging lenders now is to be responsive and agile at all times. There's not so, if I'm on holiday, I'll still take a call if I have to. I'll still I'll still push that into one of my senior guys in the office to deal with in my absence. If it's a UK thing, there's no time difference anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But if there is, I'll get on it as soon as possible to make sure the broker or the borrower isn't waiting, because I think the skill is now to just be prepared to do business, whenever you can, and help the borrowers as quick as you can.
Definitely. Well, I think one thing, I don't know if you're the same, but I think one thing that's kind of stands out as far as the property market as a whole is it's almost at times painted as like a get rich quick kind of scheme almost, because there's so many people, almost anyone can get into it. And I think certainly like how I've seen a lot of people position it is, it's a way to get more time with your family. It's a way to build like generational wealth, shall we say. But that of course comes with risks. I don't know, do you feel like that's something that's maybe missold to people?
I mean, without a doubt, I think what you come across now is a lot of, which is a good thing for the property market because it gets a lot of exposure, but you see a lot of videos, podcasts, inverted commas, gurus who are telling you what to do or want to charge you for a course, but they haven't really done it themselves, which I think is a problem. There's a lot of experts out there who are doing the same thing, and their advice I would advocate. But then you look at some horror stories. Buy this property, spend this much on it, you're going to get this much return. But you have to do your due diligence. There has to be a thorough appraisal prior. I personally don't. It's the best way of putting it. You can definitely get wealthy from property. I see that as a lender. I've got some investors that I do business with who have bought, made great investments, got a great portfolio that they're planning to leave to their family at a later date, and that'll be a bit of a legacy piece, and they've done it well. I think this get in and get out and get rich quick is not a thing. You've got to work really hard. You've got to source the right investment for the right price, source the materials, put that effort in, late nights, weekends to get your first one going, maybe painting it yourself, maybe doing the garden yourself, because the margins are that tight. And then obviously the success comes the more you do it. So there's definitely not a get rich quick element to it, but you can definitely get rich. And it's just knowing what you're doing. And I guess having the right people around you to support that, whether that's lenders, whether that's brokers, whether that's architects, builders. It's just knowing what you're doing. Some people might just want to buy a distressed property for, I don't know, 100 grand, spend 20 grand on it, sell it for 160, feel like that's a good move. Some people might want to buy a property, sort of convert it to a HMO, flip it onto a longer term mortgage and just have that as an income. So it depends what you're trying to do. You've heard me bang on about it enough, but it is, I am very much an advocate of going through professionals in the short term, especially use a broker. Speak to an estate agent, just get some knowledge other than everyone can research online and do a bit of DD, right move prices, what's got selling in the area, look at some land sourcing tools, but bounce it off someone. People, our industry is great. I must give, hours of free advice every week. Granted, that's possibly to friends or family, more than people I just meet. But I know valuers and architects who will give up a bit of their time to just sense check something for you. So don't make the mistake of thinking you're going to go in just because so-and-so has done it and bought a property for 100 grand and spent 20 on it, and now he's refinanced it for 180, that you're going to do the same. Just, take your time, get into it slowly, and then the rewards are definitely there. There's no doubt, because I've seen it time and time again. Some of my serial investors, despite all the increase in taxes and extra issues they're facing now, they're still making plenty of money and doing it well.
So I think the thing that really stood out from what you obviously just said, it leads back into the power of network, having the right people around you, and because it's not just about who can you potentially do business with, but it's like you said as well, you go into the mindset of what value can I add, because I think that's obviously when you go to these networking events, you can see the people who've been doing it longer versus the people just stepping into it, because there's that difference of what are you there for, and it's value passing back and forth and having a good conversation. It's not about sales, but when you've got opportunities like that coming along, you've then got those people you can fall back on, and if they like you, they'll give you the time of day just to obviously give you that information you need, help you along.
Right, the industry itself is solid for that. The amount of times I'll pick up the phone to a valuer just for 5 minutes. So what do you think of this? And equally, a broker or a borrower or a family friend will call me and go, Dan, this I'm thinking buying this one. Just send me a bit of information. I'll have a quick look, just make sure it makes sense. So there is that element. Taking it back to networking, I suppose where I am now, sort of 10 years into where I started, I do try and structure it more to property based or finance based. I came to, I went to every single networking event known to man for a number of years, and don't regret it, because you don't just meet property people at property events, you can meet them anywhere. And I think you've got to be open-minded to that. Don't just cut it off too early. Where I am now as my role progressed over the years, and sort of promotions aside, you have to plan more. I've got brokers all over the UK, guys that I want to see. Would I rather go and see 4 brokers in London for the day, or try and fit in a networking event? It's always going to be going to see 4 brokers in London. As much as I want to meet more brokers or more finance people, my networking has probably evolved to still doing that, but just being a bit more choosy with my time, which I think is smart work anyway. Because in my line of work, time kills deals. So if you're wasting time, you possibly losing a deal elsewhere anyway. But that transmits itself to the networking side. Some of the best guys I've met have been through sort of generic networking, whether that might be a morning networking event or an open networking event in the evening. So I'll still keen to do those where I can. But in amongst hosting my own property networking events, I tend to just stick to the more property focused ones for now. But again, I possibly use Celebrate the right to do so after 10 years of networking. And I've built up a great network across hospitality, across media, across finance, and various other angles from doing the more open stuff. So we'll continue to do so, but really homing in on the broker element for the next year or two to really try and grow the business.
Yeah, definitely. Well, as you've said, which I don't think has necessarily been clear in this conversation, in your current line of work, brokers are obviously the where most of your money comes from. It's the introducer, because you're in the position of the lender. They're the bridge between lender and the person who wants to ultimately.
They are the bridge for the bridge. Yeah, so without a doubt, and it's no disrespect to anyone, I prefer dealing with the intermediaries, the brokers. Of course, I deal with borrowers direct, or sometimes introductions from friends or family. I'm happy to take that on, but I love getting to work with a broker. Some of my best guys, we really sculpt the deal, structure the deal together. Right, the client needs to obtain this. How can we get there? Is it, I don't want to drown you in the detail of the wording, but are they going to part service it? Are they going to part retain the interest? How much do they need day one? Always things that you get on the phone with the broker and really get into the grips of. And furthermore, they've probably check the deal a bit themselves. The borrower brings the opportunity to the broker. My aim is to have the broker bringing that to me if it fits my criteria. Now, of course, we do England and Wales, we'd up to £5 million, so I don't want to see a £7 million deal in Scotland. So it's kind of ensuring the brokers are right up to speed of what we like, what we don't like. And again, that's what I back myself to do better than most. Communicate where we are, what we like. I pride ourselves on giving reasons why we don't do deals. So then the broker goes, right, our Dan doesn't like that, or he won't go to that. We know not to waste their own time or possibly mine sending that over because it's not going to fit. But then, with that should come the constant flow of deals that we can do. So that's how I see it. Yeah, love working with brokers. Spend a lot of my time with brokers, probably pester brokers at times, they might say, but I've got some genuine, lifelong friendships out of it as well. Don't get me wrong, you don't go in it for the friendships. This is business, but naturally when you get on well with someone, you've been in the trenches with someone, you've done a 3-day deal with someone where, you're emailing them at 9 o'clock at night or on the phone to 9 o'clock at night, you then become friends because you've gone through that tough process together. So yeah, wouldn't hesitate to say categorically that my main source of revenue for the firm comes to our brokers, and long may it continue. To be honest, that's the way I like to do it.
Definitely. I'm keen to just dip back into what you said as well at the start, where when you first got into it, there was a lot to learn, and you had like the checklist that you're going through on the phone. As far as going back into like the perception of the property market, it being a secure investment, despite the fluctuations, people are always gonna need homes. Essentially, that's why it's a good place for people to invest money and make money. Where would you say the majority of your education came from, and like where you're positioned now? Would you say like there's still things that you're just completely unsure of in the property market? Because there's so much to know, there's so many different strategies. If you were to point someone in the direction of like what's a good starting point to at least test the water, decide whether or not it's for you, what would you say to that?
Well, as far as the two parts, what you've asked me, firstly with me, I'm always still learning. I mean, I would say I'm a bridging expert. Development finance, there's still nuances or structures that I'm not quite on top of, but that's why we've got the team behind me, so to help. So I had a lot of my knowledge from our senior underwriter, Kate, who basically just kind of showed me a lot of the property stuff, and the M&D Mark as well. So they're well versed in property. And I'm a pain in the ass. I ask lots of questions, so that kind of gets you knowledge. But then I always say to people who ask me, don't be scared to ask. There's no such thing as a silly question if you're trying to gain your knowledge or increase your knowledge. So, I mean, there's plenty of blogs. We have blogs on our website that can educate people. I think, social media and the internet's a great thing. Just don't believe everything you read. But yeah, you can do your own research online, get in touch with professionals that can aid you along. I will get on the phone to a valuer director if I'm on, how would you value this? How does this look? Well, it's a part residential, part commercial unit. Are these figures correct? So I'll just go direct and ask the question, but I appreciate that some people aren't in a position to ask these seasoned professionals that. But, there's so much sort of info that lenders are providing on their own websites, that you can research yourself online. There's trusted publications, not to rattle off loads of names, but the B&C magazine seems to do quite well, and various others. So yeah, I think there's a broad spectrum. Me personally, I learn from other professions in the sector. I love sort of challenging my brokers on what they're seeing and where I can enhance my offering. Personally, I'm constantly trying to see. I'm learning to see how we can improve our proposition at Big. Obviously, of course, we've got limitations. We can't lend more than a certain amount. We can't give you more than a certain loan to value. We've got geographical restrictions. But in amongst things we can do, I want to know how we can excel at that. Recently we increased our loan to value to 70% based on broker feedback. One of my best brokers, a guy I really respect, constantly said, Dan, if you would jump in from 65 to 70% loan to value, that extra 5% would mean I could pass you more business. So, when I'm taking that on board and speaking to one or two others, we've decided to take that leap, and it's reaping rewards. So I think you've always got to be open to discussion. I don't think that means what you're doing is wrong, but you're trying to evolve or trying to enhance is good. But I suppose trying to box off the education learning piece, I think me personally, I get it from asking questions. A developer, I suppose, might get it from speaking to architects, estate agents. A broker is going to get it from speaking to his fellow brokers or lenders, because the broker should always be tuned into the lender's criteria. So there's always people around you who will be open to giving you that knowledge, but you've got to be sort of brave enough, I suppose, to ask for it.
Yeah, well, no harm in asking, but I would agree. I think it's probably the best way to learn, and it goes back towards having a good network around you, people you can pull on. I think one thing, obviously, with what you do with bridging loans, for anyone who isn't seasoned at it, there's obviously, like with anything, it comes with its risks. But on the surface, like, what should people know as bridging loans as like a tool for investment, and like who is it ideally for, and who is it just really not for?
Well, I think anybody who's coming into it with desperation, probably easy to start who it's not for. If it's a desperate scenario, bridging loans isn't for you. If you're coming into it desperate to get this money quickly, you haven't taken time to assess the deal as a whole, because the exit, again, something I harp on about, but the exits have got to be solid. And if you're not analyzing it properly because you feel like you're under stress or duress, then that's going to be a problem. It is for anybody, for who has thought about it properly. This could be limited companies, just sole traders. It could just be an individual for investment purposes. As far as we see it, and as far as the market sees it, it's getting used more than ever. Like statistically, factually, getting used more than ever. Bridging is a great option when thought through. So you've got your buy to let investors who want to buy property, auction, maybe spend a few quid on it and refinance it. You've got a property. You got you guys who just want to buy it because they're getting a good deal and selling it. Bridging typically is synonymous with speed. No harm in saying, if you've got overtime, you've got a bridging loan and a commercial mortgage. Commercial mortgage is going to be cheaper, or buy to let mortgage is going to be cheaper. Typically, we do the entry, we do the acquisition, and then they'll refinance onto one of these two things. But the reason why people use us and why it's busier than ever is because everyone wants the money yesterday. No one wants to wait 3 to 6 months for the commercial mortgage or the buy-to-let mortgage when they can get a bridging loan in days. So I think I need to be clear on, as much as I said it shouldn't be for people who are desperate, but then obviously the speed is a different thing. If you want fast, but you thought it through and you've gone to me, Dan, the vendor's selling this for 200 grand, it should be 250, but he wants it, if I can do it within a week, he's going to give it for me to 200. That's not desperate. That's a below market value purchase, and you're being clever. So you come to me, you get a bridge, you're paying more than you would pay on the buy-to-let mortgage, but you haven't got time to wait for that. There's no chance on that. So then you do the bridge, you buy yourself 12 months to add value to the property and refinance, or add value to the property and sell, or just refinance as is. And based on if it is worth the 250 that you say it is and not the 2, you can refinance at a higher rate anyway. So bridging loans can be used in so many ways: land acquisitions, acquisitions of commercial units to knock down and build flats, to exit other bridging loans or refinance other bridging loans. It's a fantastic tool, but the only thing I'd veer away from is desperation, because if you take that bridging loan, you can't get that exit. Your property will be repossessed. We are going to take that off you, or at the very least, you're going to incur double the interest once you've gone over our term. And if you eventually get out, you know, your figures might be so skewed at the back end that you've, you know, lost all potential profit or lost plenty of capital that you wouldn't have wanted to lose. So think it through, take advice from trusted advisors, such as brokers. But you know, it's a wide world out there, and the bridging loans being more prominent than ever as the facts back up, you know, are a great tool for anybody who's looking to sort of make that investment with the right mindset.
Definitely. Well, I mean, for anyone obviously already within the property market, one of the advantages, correct me if I'm wrong, is it gives you more leverage on the deal, if I'm right, because you can step in as a cash buyer, which obviously is the person selling the property to someone else. They want their funds as quickly as possible, and it means the deal can close faster.
What's the ways of looking at it? I mean, you're right in essence, and as much as if we provide credit back terms, they can see they've got a solid offer to take forward. But yeah, essentially, I suppose you're not a cash buyer because you're still using a funding mechanism. But what it does do on the flip side of that, and what one of my most seasoned guys does, I mean, he's got, you know, obviously can't name names, but hundreds of properties. But he still uses a bridging loan. He'll still use us because he wants his hard cash, his cash in his bank around him for a really niche opportunity or someone, or when they actually want to see a cash buyer. So he has to provide evidence of funds. So he would use a bridge and take a hit, say when he's buying a 450 grand commercial unit via us, and we're going to give him 70% of that. He's still got to pay in 30%, and he's still got to pay his 1% a month. But if all of a sudden then an absolute incredible deal comes around and they want that cash buyer, he's then got the hard cash in his bank to go, bung, here we are, I'm going to make you the best offer, I'm paying cash, I'm ready to complete on this tomorrow. And where everybody else is then scrapping around trying to obtain the finance. So it's probably a different angle of looking at it, but it just allows you to have your cash around you for other opportunities. Or, you know, you can get the speed via the bridging loan to present to the vendor or the bank or whoever, or sort of, you know, the entity that you're buying it off, that you've got a credit back terms from a lender and they're saying they're going to complete in days. So it works in a couple of ways, but one thing's for sure, it's a very, very useful tool for investors, you know, who are serious about property.
Definitely. So your role in the company as a whole, I'm keen to, we could sit here all day, couldn't we, and talk about like the business development, all the things that you've done and like how you've grown it. But from the perspective of like someone who could walk away with a little bit of insight as far as like what you've been able to achieve, what would you say, if there's anything or any things that have really stood out on reflection, when you can say like really helped move the business forward? If you were to give some that as advice to someone, what would you say has been like one of the main things that's really stood out for you on reflection, that this really pushed the business forward, that this has got us growing to where we are? Because you've talked about, obviously, you've been investing in your online presence with your socials, you've been grafting on the phone and your networking, you've obviously taken the advice on board from the market and then reflected that in your offering. Would you say it's all of those, or is there anything that you could say is like a single point of like, that's really worked for us and could work for someone else?
Well, I think it's a combination of those. What I look back on is the sort of, when we ended up having an incredible year, sort of 2023, the trust had been built. So it doesn't happen over time. That first year, I was really getting our name out there. I mean, not ashamed to say, because it is what it is. Like even some of the brokers in the Midlands weren't familiar with us, which, you know, obviously for me was just has to be rectified very quickly. But, you know, so it was the hard work in the short term. There's no real quick win for growing that. I mean, the online presence in my mind was a must, and again, that was something we didn't really have. But again, that's organically grown over time. We haven't sort of gone gung ho in any area. We've gone, right, this is the plan. Let's keep growing year on year. But yeah, ultimately, it's the trust in the brand in the business. If people don't know you, they're not going to use you. You know, the first couple of years we really spent instilling that, you know, putting my neck on the line, showing people that I'm backing us, give us a go. And to be honest, when we get brokers on board, we tend to retain them. It might take me a long time to get them on board, or it might be, Dan, you know what, so-and-so lender didn't do this, or have moved the goalpost, I can't do it anymore, can you fill in? A lot of time we've had to put out fires or pull rabbits out of hats, so to speak, to sort of win that trust or gain favor. But again, if you really help someone out when its back's against the wall, they don't forget it. So I think it's a combination of, but I think when being given the chance to show what we're about in high pressure, tight timeline situations. And then I'll be honest with you, Dan, the word of mouth spreads. Broker to broker is the best. I can sit here and sell you the dream, or anyone else the dream who may listen to this or may watch this, or whatever it may be, of how good we are and how great I am and what the business is doing. But I get broker to broker referrals. You got 10 days to do that. Give Dan a call. So just let you down, or give Dan a call. So it's that's better than me doing 100 hours of networking, or sort of 1,000 calls, because it's one industry professional trusting another industry professional and then recommending me. I mean, that only happens over time. So that's where we're in a position of now, 4.5 years later. We've done what we say we're going to do. We've built up a great reputation for sticking to our word. We're not the biggest lender, but we are the fastest, and we are the slickest in terms of our process. There's other people who can move as fast as us, I'm sure. But there's no one who can move faster than us. So, we've pulled the brand into where I want it to be, is recognized for doing those things: fast, flexible, transparent. And yeah, just should continue doing the right things like that, getting the word out there, helping brokers out in times where they need it. And that's pushed the business forward.
Definitely. I think you might have seen this yourself, but like obviously when people are trying to grow a company, they may be in such a rush to win more business. They don't value retention as much as they should. But obviously, if you've got good retention, that pays for itself in the end through referrals, through that consistent work coming through. So I would completely agree. Like, because there's this delicate balance, isn't there, where you need to bring in more work, more awareness. But if you're not going the extra mile and really showing why you deserve someone's trust and like where the value is in working with you, you're going to be burning your bridges as quickly as you try to build.
I think that could be a problem. I mean, my best broker now on paper, I've got loads of incredible brokers that I do business with, but the guy I'm doing the most deals with, we met, goodness me, before I was even that big, but I was in Little Business Loans. Didn't do any deals in my first year at Little Business, Big Property Finance, despite trying to do so. We didn't do any deals. And it was easier for me to go, all right, I'm not doing any deals with him. Let's focus on the guys. I've done a few deals, so we're trying to win some more business. But I knew we would work well together. I knew we had a connection, we had a laugh, we had a banter on the phone, in person. Fast forward now to years, 4 and going into year 5 in this gig, I'm doing plenty of deals with him, varying, small, big, medium. But, it was, the trust was continually building, the rapport was continually building. I think the short-sighted view would have been to just take him off my call list because we haven't done a deal. But once we did that deal, the floodgates opened, and we've done 15, 20 deals over the last couple of years, and that was done from years 1 and 2, not years 3 and 4. So yeah, don't be short-sighted in the approach. Keep the fundamentals right, keep the lines of communication, focus on the guys will come good, because they will come good in the end. Just keep doing the basics and it'll come.
Yeah. So, as we've said, you've obviously put a lot of legwork in. You've built the brand up over time, consistently just chipping away at it. With where it is now, is there like a grand vision? Is there like something that you're really working towards? Like, let's say you hit retirement one day and you look back, is there anything in your mind that you really want to be able to look back and say, like, we did it?
I mean, listen, we're continuing trying to grow the business. I mean, I know I'm old, but I'm still a fair bit away from retirement yet. So I'm not having those thoughts just yet, mate. But no, I think the legacy piece for me, one way or another, I want to be looked back on for doing what I say I'm going to do, doing the basics that I've alluded to a couple of times in here. Being transparent, being honest, being flexible, being, responsive, being fun to be around, but whilst getting the deals done. On a business perspective, it's ever changing. I mean, we've had so many business plans done at the start of each year, and then things outside of our control, hamper that, whether that be sort of, even economic things or even global things, wars and whatever you have it does filter down into property. I mean, we've got ambitious growth plans. Big is the truth, that we're looking to implement over the next 6, 12, 18 months. So, possibly with that in place, it'll get me back on here. Might be a better time to ask me that then. But, we're not sitting still. me personally, everybody who knows me knows, oh, if I get stale, I'm bored, it's not going to be, good. So, we're constantly striving to do better where we are. Team is solid. Teams have been together for that. No one's left in the time I've been here. We've got a tight-knit team and we're all pulling in the right direction. We've got a good source of funds. We've got good owners. We've got a good management structure. So with all that in mind, the aim is to really push forward. I want to do even more bridging and commercial and resi. And we want up our development finance game. It's been a tough 12 months in the development finance world for various reasons. Excuse me. Developers saying that they're losing the faith, their profit margins keep shrinking based on increased costs and various other issues. So I really want to get our dev finance proposition back on the go. I want to make it even more of a dent locally and further afield. My London contacts are really starting to come through for me now, and that's been years of kind of grinding that because I'm not there every week. I cover Midlands predominantly, but I do England and Wales, so I've got those relationships where I want them to be now. So it's maximising those. So it's continual growth and less retirement talk for now is probably what I'd say.
Final thought on that then. What would you say, your opinion, your experience, on the surface level, what makes a good company?
One that listens to their employees. Easy for me to say because I'm in one that does, but I've been given the opportunity to sculpt the business development the way I want it, and whether that be from when I got here, we had an internal team, or to going broader quickly. The owners are very successful. They've got 7 or 8 businesses. We had a marketing and a social media team that covered all of those businesses. I wanted ours more personalized. So I then went, got the trust of the owners and listened to some way you source how you want it for big. So I kind of got my own external team based on that. They've implemented various other changes in the process that I've suggested, having spoken to my brokers. So if we're very rigid and very sort of, we know best, that's not going to get you anywhere. The modern world is changing. We are flexible. In as much as I'm not just talking about our loans, I'm talking about, people work from home when they need to, people pick up the kids when they need to. And I'm not advocating being lazy. And there's a difference is that we're flexible to get the best out of our team. All of our guys work hard, they work fast. The 9 to 5, as far as I see it, is dead. What I see it is getting the work done. I might, be out till 3 o'clock in the morning. We're on Thursday in London with a load of brokers, and I might, start work till 10:30, 11 the next day. Should I have started at 9? Well, not really. If I'm then going to have a bit of a rest and then be my best self for the next day. And besides which, that was all good work being done the night before. So people trust you to get the job done. My management style would always be that. The guys above me have instilled that and do that. No one's hammering me down. Where are you every day? What are you doing? They know I could be anywhere, but they know I'm grafting it. That being said, if the figures aren't right, they'll be coming down on me pretty tough, which is expected. And I like that because I live or die on the figures. So yeah, I think, just a flexible, fluid management style, allowing opportunity for employees to grow and opportunity for employees to give feedback. I mean, we've got a work experience going on at the moment, and I tasked her with something, and she said to me, you said just do it like this, but I've got this option which is a bit more punchy. And I was like, fair play for actually having a personality and a voice. So I would always encourage that element. People need to be able to feel like they can be heard in the workplace. Otherwise, they're not going to be enjoying it. So that I mean, for what it's worth, that's my opinion. I'm not saying that's right, but certainly that's how I like to work. That's how I would expect the guys underneath me to work. And luckily for me, that's how the guys above me have allowed me to work.
No, I completely agree. I think it's clear to see, before I got into what I do now, I was in a hospitality background, which is, it's infamous for poor management styles.
Yeah.
And I think what really, I could never really understand it because I was briefly in a position of managing teams. And what always stood out for me was you could see, it's like night and day. You can see the team that's getting grilled constantly, they don't feel valued, they're being spoken to like dirt. And then you've got the other side where you just take the time of day, the people at the end of the day listen. And if you can incentivize people in a way that they're happy with, they want to work hard, and just giving them that feedback, things are inevitably going to go wrong. But I agree with what you said as well, base it on deliverables. We the same way as if you're working with a contractor or something, we agree deadline by this date to this standard. If it's met, happy days. I don't need to know what else you're doing. Was your time? But that's something that's always stood out for me, that it's almost like the management who work like that, they've got blinders on where they can't see that they are the problem.
Well, it doesn't lend itself to long-term employees and long-term commitment. As I say, everyone in my office, I'm the newest person in this office. You know, we've all been together a long time, and I've been here 4.5 years. So that kind of tells you what you need to know about our sort of teamwork, our working environment. You know what I mean? It lends itself to people really wanted to work for each other, taking on each other's roles, helping someone out when they've had something going on, whether that be personal or professionally, or they're just on holiday, whatever it is. You know, it's a team effort, and you know that's the way we'll always operate.
Absolutely. Well, I think that nicely brings us to an end, mate. Always nice catching up with you.
Appreciate it, man. Interesting.
Appreciate your time.
My man.
Oh,
Let's go that way. Let's go that way. Let's go the real one. I'm too old for. I'm not retirement old, but I still handshake over it rather than fist bump.